Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are still continuing to have enunciation to dharana, dhyan or dhyana dharana sadhana so that we can have a little foundation to go into the last three angas of Ashtanga Yoga called Antaranga of Ashtanga Yoga, namely dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So, today we are trying to look at the new meditative techniques. This is so important in the light of our times because there is afforestation of new meditative techniques found in the world today. And all these new meditative techniques have risen from heterodox philosophies, and they have a negative approach, and of course, unfortunately, including India, such meditations are rampant and they are mushrooming at a very rapid rate. They are mushroomed at a rapid rate as well. So this is called as the Adhyatma based on tale of woes, and it is completely negative in tone. Cloud of melancholy, cloud of frustration, dejection will be formed in the mind stuff, in the consciousness, and they are so strong that they almost are strangulating in their nature, and therefore as a defensive technique people take recourse to neo-adhyatma, neo-meditative techniques. These techniques of our times have sprung from something that can be said to be 2,400 years ago. In philosophical system, there is always often mention of Saugata philosophy, and it is very, very negative in tone, where one conceives oneself or believes in oneself that one is just a paltry bit, a worm, an insect. And with such negative tone, one tries to enfeeble Vaasanas, because these Vaasanas and tendencies can be enfeebled by putting them in a gas chamber. The gas chamber is of negativistic tone in mind, frustrated, dejected, dispirited, motivated, melancholy, sorrows. So when sorrows engulf a mind, people take recourse to anything that would seem to be giving a solace. And there, in that kind of neo-adhyatma, neo-spiritualism, one tends to believe that I am just a paltry bit, I am just a meager insect in the world, I am absolutely helpless, hapless, hopeless, defeated, inglorious, destitute in every sense of the term. And what we have around is sorrow drenched world. Everything around us is absolutely ephemeral, momentary. Or everything around us is just a void. It is all meaningless. Our life itself is meaningless. We are meaningless. Our life is meaningless. What we have around in the world is also meaningless. So just as one is absolutely low in spirits while moving in cremation grounds or burial grounds, no one is energetic, spirited while moving in cremation grounds and burial grounds. So similarly, the mind is made to become like that. And the life is tale of woes. There is nothing positive in the life. There is no silver lining at all in a life. It's all utterly dark, utterly fearsome, utterly dispiriting. So, the vasanas are encountered by paralyzing one's own mind. And this happens, the sorrows come in so many ways in mundane world. Ill health, bad health, material destitution, then the success deserting everywhere, failure coming from all corners. So the life is in complete despair, dejection, frustration. And there, with such kind of mind, the vasanas are almost taken to a dead state. And with vasanas in such a state, it is vasana paralysis created by melancholy, sorrows, despair, dejection, etc. And that's how in new Adhyatma the vasanas are countered. Otherwise, vasanas are a formidable force. And it is not easy to engage in a bout with vasanas. So that's why this is a kind of path that some of the heterodox philosophers postulated and gave a kind of paralysis to vasanas itself. Now, vasanas actually never get paralyzed. So it's a temporary condition for lifetime, and that's how they think. That is the spiritualism, and that is referred to as a neo-spiritualism. These heterodox philosophies of Saugata and Arhata, that is Buddhism and Jainism, they had a lot of such overtones of sorrows with which the life was absolutely under dark clouds. And therefore, the rise of neo-spiritualism. The Orthodox philosophies do not give room to such despondency, such dispiriting philosophy, but philosophy that would enthuse. That's called Vijigusha Vritti. That is undefeatable. One thinks one is undefeatable, undefeated. And the thing is that we all carry out the mundane life with victorious mindset. But when it comes to spirituality, which just now referred to as neo-spirituality, we come under the cloud of helplessness, haplessness, hopelessness. But the Orthodox philosophy never gave room to that. We are all Rishi Kulotpanna. See the greatness. We are all Rishi Kulotpanna. We have come from the lineage of the great Rishis. And we are part of the creation of Brahma. The creator, the divinity. We are all part of his creation, and therefore there is no room for despondency. So that's the difference between Orthodox philosophy postulated Adhyatma, Paramartha, spirituality, and heterodox philosophy generated spirituality. Bhagavad Gita in one of its verses in the 15th chapter says, Mama eva anshaha, this jiva, this finite soul, Mama eva anshaha, it is his particle. We are all his particles. So if divinity is glorious, we as his particles cannot be inglorious. So the Orthodox philosophies postulated Ishavasya Vritti, which has been referred to quite often. Ishavasya. Not that this entire creation around is zero, void, nil, momentary, ephemeral, but it is all his residence. The whole creation is his residence, where he resides. So it cannot be inglorious, it has to be glorious. So from the Vedic philosophy, the Paramartha, Adhyatma, spirituality that got birth is absolutely positive. The divinity is not praised for our helplessness, haplessness, hopelessness, but we praise the divinity for being in his creation, being as a part of his creation, in his creation. So there is a gratitude, sense of gratitude, and therefore we have stavanam, we praise him. We don't praise him as paltry bits, helpless, hapless insects and worms. So that is called Vijigishu Vritti in Adhyatma. But that is what is underlying Patanjali's philosophy. Not the defeated tone of life, but highly positive tone of life, that we are part of his creation. He is supreme, he is glorious, Param Aishwarya, Parama Samarthya, and we are part of his creation, so we cannot be insignificant. So we have seen during Ishvara Pranidhana why Ishvara Pranidhana is done, and therefore it lends a different basis for dhyana sadhana with enormous amount of gratitude to be part of this creation of the Almighty. And one should understand how it is distinctly different than the one that is rampantly getting afforested in our times, which is from the heterodox philosophies. And what Patanjali is founding is based on orthodox philosophical systems. So that's the basic difference. Another misconception that we have in new spiritualism or spirituality is that spirituality is all goody, bed of roses. This is also far-fetched idea. It's not bed of roses. Many people try to escape from worldly problems and try to come onto the track which is studded with rose petals, thinking that this is a rose path, rosy path. Adhyatma is neither a rosy path nor a path studded with negativity and negativism. So we should beware of the new cults and the meditative techniques of new cults, because that is rampantly available everywhere. And we should be knowing that Patanjali's system is completely founded on the orthodox thought systems, philosophies, religions. Now, with this factor having taken into consideration, we now proceed to the yogic process of dhyana sadhana, yoga prakriya. What is the yoga prakriya of dhyana sadhana? It is Antaranga of yoga. Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi is already declared as Antaranga of yoga, and we have considered that it invariably starts with pranayam. So all the orthodox meditative techniques are based on pranayam. They get founded on pranayam, and we have already seen the effect of pranayam, shvasayam, which works as chitta parikarma and which gives a mind stuff, elated state, a transcendent state, a cosmicalized state. And that is why all the dhyana sadhanas mentioned in orthodox system are based on pranayam, because pranayam gives a touchstone effect to chitta, the mind stuff. So shvasayam, pranayam transfigure the entire embodiment, apada talamastaka. It becomes all bradatic and prananomic. And we have seen this in the section of pranayam which we dealt with on earlier occasion. So the pronoun I, the me, the I, and the mine, all that is mine, and all that is within me becomes shvasamaya, shvasaghana, shvasa prachura, pranamaya, pranaghana, prana prachura. And therefore one is far beyond all delimitations. That is called nirupadhik avastha, nirupadhik avastha, vyaktatit avastha. One is beyond phenomenal, one is beyond all delimitations such as caste, class, creed, race, gender, age, condition, etc. And one is in a transcendent state very easily by Shwasayam and Pranayam. And one goes beyond the manifest condition. Otherwise, we all identify ourselves with a manifestation. We are a physical manifestation, we are a mental manifestation, but pranayam takes us beyond the manifest condition. We become atita, that is vyaktyatita. We transcend the phenomenal condition, phenomenal characteristics and attributes, and we become universalized. Vaishvibhuta, we become universalized. We do not remain individuals, we become universal. Because prana has been defined as a Vaishva or Vishwa Prana Shakti. Vaishvika Prana Chaitanya Shakti. So that Vaishvikata, universality comes through Shwasayam and Pranayam, and we transcend our personal gravities, personal attribute, personal characteristics, which are often quoted as caste, class, creed, race, ethnicity, age, gender, condition, state, etc. So the ahamtva and mamatva is altogether different. It is on a transcendent plane. The pronoun I itself becomes indeed a capital I. So also the mindness, which is under the gravity and radiation of magnanimity. Therefore the kartrutvam, jnatrutvam, all these petty egos fade away. Otherwise we are all the time caught in our kartrutvam and jnatrutvam. That I do this, I can do this, I only can do this, I know this, I only know this. So that's abhimana, called kartrutva abhimana, jnatrutva abhimana. They all just disappear like camphor enflamed. So the ahamtva and mamatva goes away. Kartrutva abhimana gets evaporated. Jnatrutva abhimana gets evaporated. And that's how we get universality. Then the mantravalambanam, pranavalambanam of pranayam comes up. This further escalates that transcendent condition, and the pratyahar very naturally ensues. That pratyahar, as you should recall, is pranic and pranayamic. And the pranayam, as Patanjali tells us, dharana yogyatva comes up. Dharana suja manasa yogyata manasaha is what Patanjali has told us in pranayam topic. So that's how very naturally we get an entry into dharana dhyan samadhi realm, antaranga realm. And this inwardliness, infaceedness has indeed ocean depth. The pranavajapa, pranavanussandhanam, nadanusandhanam, nadalaya, all these things becomes probable in that realm, in the domain which is transfigured by pranayam, pranavavalambanam, nadavalambanam. And there is very natural confinement aspect of the chitta called dharana. And then when it also escalates, then it becomes dhyana, which has tripartite division of dhyata, dhyana, dheya. And then comes the pratyayikatanata, and then comes the samadhi. Arthamatra nirbhasam swarupa shunyam. So if you recall this nirvitarka samapatti description, it will give you some idea as to how the mind is divinized by the personal deity or universal principle. The point is, all these dharana dhyan or dhyan dharana sadhana, as it is popularly known, it commences with sthula pranayama. Now we are trying to crystallize the process. It all commences with sthula gross pranayama arambha, and then it's a continuous process, uninterrupted process up to samadhi. There is no interruption in between, and if at all there is any interruption, one again comes back to starting point, which is sthula pranayama. So let's try to understand these stages through which the yogi goes for dhyan dharana and then samadhi. So it all starts with gross pranayam. It starts with shvasayam, then it becomes sthula pranayam, and then the chitta is dissolved into that pranayam, and then comes the pranavavalambanam, the Om. With that, the chitta becomes exaltedly transparent, pure, taintless, spotless, as well as transfigured, transmuted. That is called chitta pavitrya karanam. Chitta pavitri karanam. It becomes pavitra. In such case, the pranava, the Om, becomes very, very significant to give nadhanusandhanam. So this is a different pranavavalambanam. Earlier it is just the japa going on. The pranava japa comes in the phase after sthula pranayam. In sthula pranayam itself, the Om japa is taken up. It continues and continues until sukshma pranayam, and then it continues further, and it lands into a meditative zone. You should recall the meditative object comes up like the dream objects come in mind. We do not decide on what dream to have, and we don't get the dream. The dream appears in our sleep. Similarly, the metaphysical principle that is to be revealed appears from Om, it fades in from Om, and the mind gets confined to it. That is called chitta bandha, and that is dharana. Now that escalates into pratyayikatanata called dhyanam, and that escalates into arthamata nirbhasa swarupa shunyam, that is samadhi. And that's how it is a continuous process. From sthula shvasayam pranayam, it is a continuous process. In case it is interrupted somewhere, obstructed somewhere, one has to come back to starting point and again commence from sthula shvasayam pranayam and again proceed. So that is the process of dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So it is to be noted how integral it is with pranayama. So the journey of dhyana in yoga commences with pranayama. It precisely commences with sthula pranayama. And then it escalates into pranavavalambanam, pratyahar, chitta pavitrikaranam, then appearance of metaphysical principle in the mind, which fades in from pranava, from om, and then there is confinement, and then there is absorption, and then there is unification. So dharana is confinement, dhyana is absorption, and samadhi is unification. That is how the yogic process is, which is briefly mentioned here because we had considered this on an earlier occasion when we were dealing with samapatti. Precisely, savichara nirvichara samapatti. So having given little introduction to that, let's also take a account of the modern concept of meditation, which has come in modern subject of psychology. Because the whole world is highly under the influence of the modern social structure, which is given by development of science and technology. And moreover, for the Indian mindset, they want everything in English for their convenience. So much so that modern generation would be looking into Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, and various scriptures and texts, and the saintly texts such as Jnaneshwari, Dasbodh, Gatha. They want to get that in English. That would be very, very, very fortunate if it is all available in English. So today we turn to Upanishads by taking recourse to English translations. We take recourse to Sankhya, Vedanta, Shad Darshanas by taking recourse to English translations. This is a very unfortunate scenario that has come up. So without the crutches of English, the modern generation cannot make headway even in Adhyatma. It can be understood that in modern realm, modern science, it is not possible without taking support of English, leaning on English. But even for Adhyatma and Paramartha, we have a generation now that leans on the stick of English or takes the crutches of English. So, in English, the word dharana is rendered as concentration, dhyana as meditation, and samadhi as trance. So, rather than saying dharana, dhyana, samadhi, if someone says concentration, meditation, trance, it is better understood. But this is highly misleading. Concentration is a psychological term. Concentration is always with respect to a sensory object. You cannot concentrate on something which is not a sensory object. Because that which is not a sensory object becomes nominal for us. So you can concentrate while you are listening to music, you can concentrate while you are reading a book. You can concentrate on something that when you are having something as a sight for vision. Like these days we have practices of Trataka, of yoga, classical yoga, and they go on gazing at that wick or the lamp. So that is concentration of the senses, of the eyes. Eyes concentrate, ears concentrate, psychological mind concentrates. So these are sensory objects for concentration. Whereas in yoga, the vairagya is already there, and vairagya means you have gone past, you are gone beyond the sensory objects. You can't be stuck in sensory objects to be concentrating. And there is no concentration beyond sensory objects. So that's a very, very faulty word that has come into English, particularly to translate the Yoga Sutras. So dharana is said to be concentration, and then dhyana as meditation. Now meditation is also something that happens in the brain. It's a brain phenomenalism. Meditation is a brain phenomenalism, whereas Patanjali is speaking about chitta, which is all over the embodiment. And therefore, meditation is not a right term for dhyana. And then trance. What is trance? You get a trance in sensory objects. Where you concentrate, you might reach the trance. Because these are escalations. Concentration raised to something becomes meditation. Meditation raised to something becomes trance. So concentration, meditation, trance are all faculty functions of the brain, higher faculty functions of the brain. So it is not proper to render dharana as concentration, dhyan as meditation, and samadhi as trance. So that's why in newer techniques, they take a position, they sit in meditation, they try to sit straight, erect. And then the proposal that you must sit erect actually means you must be constantly making endeavor to sit erect, because we naturally collapse. You cannot maintain your erect position of the sitting. You will be constantly sitting straight. Otherwise, it becomes like a sack and collapses. The body becomes like a sack and collapses. And then close the eyes and have nasagra drushti or bhrumadya drushti. And then go on rutting om, 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 om. Try to have a psychomental concentration on the figure of the deity, personal deity, and go on doing it. It would fade in and fade out. Go on repeating it. And ideally it is done in early mornings, called Brahma Muhurta, and more often one would be dozing out, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and trying to meditate. And that's how the meditations are done. That is done sometimes very enthusiastically, and with the Bhrumadya Drushti, etc., neurological problems crop up, and then they run to a doctor. So this is what happens in the newer techniques. People are struggling to get concentration to be getting yoga. Because unless concentration comes, meditation won't come. Unless meditation comes, trance won't come. So they have that earnest desire for concentration. But yoga nowhere advocates concentration because it is based on Vishaya Vairagya, whereas concentration is always on Vishaya, always on sensory object. And that's the big miss that the present generation is getting. Or some of them take a mala and go on doing that japa, moving the mala 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. And when the mind is misbehaving, perhaps they will whiplash the mind. So there is quite a battle going on. In 2 conditions, I want to meditate and the mind spoiling the meditation. And therefore there is a battle. Some people launch the offensive on the mind, and more often it ends in a neurological disorder. Whereas in yogic process, as we discussed, the mind is transfigured, transmuted, etherealized, sanctified, purified, and when the mind is taken to such a state, the Bhagavad Gita describes Yatha Deepo Nivatastho Nengate Sopa Smruta Yogino Yatachittasya Yunjato Yogamatmanaha in 6.19. It is like a lamp kept in a windless place. It is very steady. It doesn't flicker. So also the yogi's mind becomes like a deepa, nivatastha, where the breeze is not blowing, then it becomes steady, and therefore the yoga happens. And in Orthodox system, the very dhyana has been defined as dhyanam nirvishayam manaha. Such definition comes in Maha Upanishad, such definition comes in Sankhya Sutra 3.25. Sankhya Sutra also in another place 3.30. Ragopahati Dhyanam. Dhyanam is that which strangulates raga, which enfeebles, attenuates raga, attachment. And therefore Darshanopanishad says Dhyanam Samsara Nashanam 9.1.1. So such are the definitions of dhyana, where mind should be nirvishaya. Concentration is always on vishaya. So see the fallacy. So we need to understand this culture that is given by heterodox philosophies which are baneful, and then given the orthodox philosophies which are bountiful. So that was what I wanted to tell you about in the enunciation aspect to Dharana Dhyan Samadhi. There is much to go beyond. As I said, it's a continuous process from pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. You cannot be interrupting. You cannot say, I will do pranayam and pratyahara in the morning and do dharana, dhyan, samadhi in the evening. It has to be launched on through the pranayam, as I emphatically said little while ago. So let's try to understand further this aspect of continuum, continuity, which the classical texts have defined. But that we will do in our next session. Enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.